Good evening, everybody. My name's Robin Honsberger, and I have with me Ali for a super exciting session tonight geared towards runners. Ali has been with us just over 3 months. We're super excited to have her on our team. Ali has one of the most impressive resumes I've ever seen when looking at physios. She graduated from the Manchester University for the physiotherapy program in 1991. She received her MSc in Science of Sport Injury in 2006. She has been incorporating Pilates into her physio practice since 2002, and she's received the gold standard for the Association of Chartered Physiotherapists in Sport Medicine in the UK. She's had a plethora of experience through elite sport, private practice, where she ran her own clinic in the UK for 15 years. She's worked with the National Health Service, the Royal Air Force, and then 2 years working in Australia. She's been to a number of Olympic Games, Paralympic Games, and continues to work with athletes of high caliber sport to this day. But she really focuses on incorporating Pilates into her work with her physiotherapy clients as well. So without further ado, I am going to pass things off to Ali. She's got so much knowledge, and we really want this session tonight to be interactive. A few housekeeping items before we begin. I'm going to put myself off of camera so that we can just see Ali tonight as the presenter. If anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or use the chat function in the side of the Zoom, and I will be monitoring that. But we're really excited to get moving tonight. I'm a new runner. I went on a run yesterday for the first time outside in quite a while. So I know that I will be really excited to learn from you tonight, Ali, and I know the rest of our attendees will as well. So without further ado, thank you for your time, and I'm going to pass things over to you today.
Okay, thanks, Robin, for that great introduction. So just for starters, normally when I do Pilates, obviously it would be one-to-one. I'd understand what your background is. And when I do my classes, they're a maximum of 6 to 10, so I actually can correct people. So obviously, if you want to take part in the exercises tonight, that's fine, but I don't know anything about your health conditions and whether you can exercise and stuff, so take it cautiously. I'm happy to have questions as we go along. But obviously it's under your own risk, because I don't know and I can't see any of you on screen because this is a presentation. So in terms of Pilates, so I've worked with Great Britain Athletics for about 8 years, sort of partly with their Paralympic and their able-bodied program. And one of the key things that as a base is their sort of core function, and so I incorporated Pilates into a lot of their sort of rehab preventative programs when we screen them. And what I've found in the past is that loads of runners, they do some strength training, they do loads of running, but actually the underlying core that supports all of that has been pretty poor. Even those that have been competing for sort of like at international level, we found that actually their core wasn't great. And I think things are changing with that. So this is what this is based on. So what I'm going to do today is some basic mat exercises to look at what are the fundamentals of Pilates. And then I'll bring that into sort of more some running based drills that you would be able to try. So I'm happy to have questions as we go along. It's obviously a little bit of a taster for you to think, well, is this something that you want to try? And you could come and get a sort of tailorized program. So every athlete that I work with, their program is tailored to them. So just while I'm in sitting, it's easier for me to show you a few things before I go down onto the floor. So your core is based around your pelvis, and you've got 2 bony points at the front here and your pubic bone here, and there's sort of like a triangle here. So I'm going to talk a lot about in terms of like, is your pelvis in a neutral spine or is it in an imprinted spine in terms of like the Pilates things that we're going to do? And we're going to think about your pelvis engaging with your rib cage and what's happening in terms of your shoulders, because your basis for your running, you need to be stable in terms of your trunk to have a good running action from this. And what I found with a lot of runners, and if you look at some of the international things, so if you look at the sprinters that are coming through, what you want is to have that pelvis nice and solid. The poor techniques in a lot of the runners that you'll see, there'll be a lot of sort of movement here. So if you're moving a lot within your pelvis here, you then haven't got a good base for what's happening in terms of your thighs. And then that translates in terms of like, obviously for injuries, but also in terms of your stride length and your performance. So we're going to look at your pelvis, how that relates to your shoulders, and translate that into some exercises. So we'll start with the Pilates basic principles, and we're lying on our back with our knees bent up. So our arms are nice and light by our sides. So we're thinking about that pelvis here with that triangle, and you can find the bony points here and just feel them. And if you're trying this, what I want you to think about doing is just try and rock that pelvis back and forward. So if I lift my hand out of the way, you can see how I'm just gently rocking back and forward. So if we're going to find that neutral spine position, what you want to think about is that triangle being parallel with the floor and the ceiling. So when you found that position, you're just going to think about trying to tighten those abdominal muscles as if you're pulling your belly button to the floor and then releasing off. So you're gently going to tighten and then releasing off. So we're just thinking about tightening our deep core. Now, if you're struggling to think, what muscles am I meant to be tightening here? If you put your fingers just inside of these bony points and do a little bit of a cough, so you go, and you'll feel them tighten underneath those fingers. Those are the muscles that you want to be engaging, and they're the ones that wrap around your spine and provide the support. And your abdominals that are in your six pack are the ones that move you on top of that. So we're going to think about tightening those abdominals and rolling into that imprint position where you flatten your back pelvis onto the floor and then come back to neutral spine. So tighten and roll down to imprint and then come back to neutral spine. So when you're coming back to that neutral spine, you need to be able to keep those muscles working and holding it there. Here we go. Now we're going to tighten and go down into that imprint position. Keep it there. And now we're thinking about bringing those arms up over shoulders, breathing in, breathing out as you bring them back down. So what I want you to try and focus on here is tightening and going into imprint, so that back's flattened. And then as you're bringing those arms up, what you don't want to happen is that any arching here. So we're trying to keep this base nice and solid. So abdominals tight, roll down to that imprint, take those arms up, breathing in, breathing out as you come back down. So abs tight, roll into imprint, hold it there, breathe in, take those arms up over your head, breathe out as you come back down. Okay, so we've kept that solid trunk now, and thinking a little bit about what's happening in the shoulder control. So abs are tight, rolling into that imprint position, bring those arms up to 90. Reach up to the ceiling and then squeeze those shoulder blades together. So we're focusing about what's happening in that pelvis, keeping tight. Breathing in, reaching those arms up to the ceiling. Breathing out, squeeze together. So this is important in terms of what's happening with that shoulder control. So we're thinking up here, we're reaching those shoulders forward, and then we're squeezing those shoulder blades together, because this control here links with what's happening lower down as well. All right, so last time doing that, abs tight, roll into imprint, bring those arms up over our heads, and then bring them back down. Okay, we're going to put this into a little bit more in terms of thinking around what are we going to do with our running action. So abdominals are tight. I want you to think about imprinting that back down, because that's an easy position to hold that control. Unless you've got a great core, you can't hold that in that neutral spine and then start moving. So when we're starting, we always do everything in imprint. So we're going to tighten, go to imprint, and then I want you to think about controlling one knee up and then coming back down. Keep an imprint, lifting that other knee up and come back down. So what you want to be thinking about here is that pelvis keeping nice and still as I'm moving those legs up and down. So you think about a running action where you're lifting your legs up and down. You've got to be really solid in terms of this pelvis. If you're struggling to do this when you're lying down, you move that into walking, you move it into running and faster, your control gets less and less. So you're thinking about controlling those up and down. So your back's imprinted, and then you're controlling up and back down. Okay, now if that's really easy in terms of a core exercise for you, to make that into the next level, we would tighten and imprint the back and bring those legs up to what's called tabletop position. And then we would be touching one toe down to the mat and back. So you can see, let's move up a little bit in the screen. So you can see once I've imprinted and brought my legs up to tabletop, I'm able to keep it there without any movement here. And then as I go down, you can see with that sort of colour around my leggings that I'm not moving at all in my trunk. Now, if I was moving, what you would see happen, I don't know if you can see, that moves a little bit there. So I'm not engaging my core, and every time I go down, my pelvis is going with my legs and I'm rotating. So imprinting, touching down, and coming. Touch down and back. Okay, we're just going to bring those feet back down now. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of a running action. So abdominals are tight. You're going to think about, well, when you run, your arms are bent at 90 and you go opposite arm, opposite leg. So we're going to go back to lifting our legs up, but bring in those arms. So we're going to control up and back down. So abdominals are tight, imprinted, control up and back down. That's tight, imprint, coming up and down. So opposite arm, opposite leg. Okay, now although this isn't going to be a running action, I'm going to make it a little bit harder in terms of what's going to work on the core. So we're going to think about moving arms and legs. So abdominals are tight. I'm going to control opposite arm, opposite leg come in. So again, thinking about really keeping that back engaged. So breathe in and breathe out. So each time, think about re-engaging those abdominals and taking those arms in and out. Okay, so some of you may find that that's really easy. So again, we would take it to that tabletop position, Thinking about that core's tight, and then we control out and in. Okay, so we're doing slow and controlled. The slower you do it, the harder it is to work. So if you find that that's hard, you can work within a smaller range. So again, what you don't want is any lift in that low back. And as you get better, you can take those legs all the way down. Exhaling out and in. Okay, and I'm going to bring those legs back down. Okay, we're going to go and do an exercise that's really good for working, stretching through that back and then adding some extra control through. So abdominals are tight. We're going to roll through and come up into a bridge position. So legs should be in a line with your trunk and arms should be nice and light by your side. So you're not using your arms to support here. Keep engaged here. And then you're rolling from that mid-back all the way down. Don't let go until you're at the bottom. Abdominals are tight. Controlling up into that bridge position. And hold it there. Roll from that mid-back. And control down. If that's easy, you can move it on to the next level. So you can stay having a go at that. We can have abdominals tight, rolling into imprint, coming up into that bridge position. Hold it at the top. And then you're just going to lift one heel up and back down. Lifting the other heel and back down. And then control through the spine down. Okay, so that's the next level. Abs tight, controlling up, holding it there. So as you lift that heel up, you shouldn't see any drop here. So you're sustaining that good control there. If you find you lift your heel and you're dropping there, you've really got to engage that core and lift up. And then controlling it back down. Okay, and again, we'll give you a third level. If that's easy, abdominals are tight, controlling up into that bridge position, and then you can lift that whole foot off and back down, and lifting that other foot back down. And again, you can see my working through my core because my arms are nice and light. So we're just going to try a couple more of those. So you've got an option just to hold it, lift your heel or lift your whole foot. So abs tight, controlling up, breathing at the top. So you can hold it there, think about really keeping that good position, or lifting a heel, or lifting your foot up, and then controlling that back down. All right, one more. So abdominals are tight, rolling up into bridging. Hold it at the top, hold it there, and either lift a heel or a foot if you can on either side, and then control it back down and ease off. So now I'm just going to translate some of that into standing. I'm just going to reposition my screen a little bit. You will have seen a lot of runners do a lot of drills where you'll see them walking down the track like this. So what I often observe with that is people's hips are all over the place. They haven't thought about what's happening here. They haven't thought about their glutes. They haven't thought about what's happening in their upper body. So we're just going to try some different things. So what you want to think about, right, what position is my pelvis in? So abdominals are tight and you're tucking under. So that's your position that you want to be thinking about in these drills. not arching forward like this, because you're losing control then what's happening. So abdominals are tight and you're tucking under. And then you're thinking about, right, shoulders down and back and controlling, lifting up. Okay, and come back down. Abdominals are tight, you're tucked in. So you're thinking about that running action and controlling within that. So I'm going to try and do that facing you so you can see what I'm doing. So abdominals are tight, controlling up and come back down. So obviously I'm doing this in just bare feet, which makes it much more of a challenge. So abdominals are tight. Ooh. Lifting up, holding it there, and then coming back down. So if you find that was a challenge, what you would start in would put your trainers in, because then you've got a bigger, an easier base of support. So you're thinking about keeping tight in that pelvis, shoulders back, and then looking at where you're going, and then controlling through and come back down. So that would be a starting in terms of doing it in your trainers. So you can also progress on that. So abdominals are tight. I'm going to get rid of my trainers on this. So abdominals tight, coming up, and then controlling backwards and come back up and down. So abs tight, tucking in. You're also thinking about those glutes in your hips, controlling up, coming back and down. So abs tight, control up, take that leg backwards and forwards and down. Now, what you find if you haven't got great control in this is abdominals are tight. You'll come up here. As you take that leg backwards, instead of being able to control, you'll tip forward or you'll lose control. So the focus in this drill would be bringing your foot up and controlling it back here. So often if you've got your tight hip flexors through the front here, you haven't got enough movement. So you're having to compensate what's happening there. So there's lots of things that I think about when I'm assessing someone, because you may not have good control, or is it because everything's too tight that you can't do that drill? So we've translated that drill that we were lying on the floor, lifting our legs up into this running action here. You're thinking about keeping these focused there, and you can see if I do it well, that I'm controlling it through like that. And then there's lots of ways that I would progress on that, but it's just something for you to start with. So we're going to go back to the floor and just renew those principles, and then open to any questions. So the basic principles again that we're thinking about any Pilates and core is that triangle. So we're thinking about tightening those deep core muscles. We've got that pelvis neutral position of the triangle, and we can move it into that imprint flattening position. We want to have the pelvis engage with the rib cage. And one of the exercises where we work on that is taking those arms up and coming back down. And then also thinking about that shoulder girdle. So we're imprinting and we're working in the shoulders and those scapulars in there, in that position, and controlling back down. So thinking about core, how that keeps tight in the pelvis so we can move those legs better and those arms better, keeping everything controlled when we're running. Okay, so open to any questions.
That was great, Ali. I can really feel my glutes activating and my core activating, and I don't always think about that when I'm going to run. One question for you that I think would be really interesting for our attendees tonight is to really explain the difference between participating in a Pilates class with just a regularly trained instructor versus a physiotherapist, because there's quite a big difference. And I really would like you to highlight sort of where your physiotherapy expertise helps build this program properly.
So obviously as a physio, we kind of understand injuries, how the body kind of works. And so I incorporate my sort of physio knowledge in terms of how muscle works, how the muscles need to be strong in terms of injury prevention, and link that with my Pilates. And I think if you're also a Pilates instructor, you sort of just keep your Pilates within that Pilates box, where some of the things I've done tonight are probably not pure Pilates, but they're Pilates linked with specifics for more obviously for running in this session. So I link all of those, and I sort of can tailor it to everyone. So I guess an example would be like yesterday I was with Wheelchair Basketball doing their core sessions in preparing for Tokyo, if it happens. And they have athletes with amputees, some that have got no leg function. So they're all very different. So I've got to tailor each exercise to each athlete, because I couldn't just do, right, we'll all do this, we'll all do that. So you can adapt to each individual.
That's a great example, because we all have pre-existing injuries that we might not even realize are impacting our performance. Now, another question too, because there's lots of different sort of Pilates philosophies out there. So why did you choose to do STOT for your training?
So STOT is one of the sort of purest sort of Pilates, and I think one of the sort of first ones that started. So I thought that was an excellent course to do. And then on the side, I met my husband was from Toronto, so it gave me something to do while I was here. But just STOT in itself has like a really good reputation, a good training program, and that was kind of why I wanted to do that one.
That's cool. No, that's great. It's just neat to understand why people choose different avenues. Now, for somebody who is new to running, for example, how often would you suggest doing Pilates? Sort of, because we have a few different groups of runners on the call tonight. We've got some new runners. We've got some runners who are fairly elite, I would say. So let's kind of segment them. Let's start with new runners. What would be your suggested training program incorporating Pilates for a new runner?
So if you did Pilates sort of 3 times a week for 15 minutes for some basics, you'd see great gains within that. So that would be a good base level to start. If you're sort of a higher level athlete, then I would say that you'd want to do at least sort of 30 minutes 3 times a week if you really want to have that an impact in terms of your performance. Another thing in terms of Pilates and running and linked to sort of strength training is that because running particularly is sort of like quite linear in how it is, strength and sort of core Pilates training is really important in terms of injury prevention. So even reducing a little bit of your running to put that in, you'd reduce your injuries and you'd probably get performance gains from that.
Interesting. So in terms of a periodization plan for some of our elite runners, is there certain phases of their training where they would be doing less road running or track running and more focused on the strength in terms of different parts of the year?
So if you had an example of, say, a track runner, Obviously, quite often the longer distance track runners maybe do the winter kind of like cross country type stuff or road running, but how we would work it in sort of like high level sport is that they would come back from their break in the summer. We would do a lot of screening in terms of what's flexibility, what's strength training, how's the body functionally moving in different drills. So we would video them doing some of those drills like down the track. And then that would be incorporated into their program. So traditionally they would do 3 times a week strength training within the gym, and often a lot of this work would be linked with that, or sometimes they would use it as a little bit of an activation before they would go on their runs. So to build, if you were going to do it races, say in the summer, you would do more of your base work during the winter, but you would maintain that at a lower level because you've got your base already during the summer where you're competing more.
That's interesting. So there's different programs for in between runs, but you can also use some of the Pilates work to warm up before you go for a run. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. Yeah. So particularly if you think like glutes are a key one in terms of activating for your hip control when you're running. A lot of athletes would do some walk drills, like so some of that basic standing stuff that I did would incorporate into more walk dynamic stuff if they're doing things on the track, but it's how you do your control that's important within that.
That's good to know, because I just walked down my street and started running. So I really should be booking an appointment in with you and getting a proper warm-up routine. So those are some really interesting sort of concepts. Now, if you would say, what is some of the top injuries that you're seeing in runners and how Pilates might help to impact that?
So if we're looking at, say, I guess your average runner would be those that maybe do some of your road runs and things like that. So quite a lot of injuries are knee to do with your iliotibial band. So like your iliotibial band is down the outside of the knee here. And so some of your biomechanics is obviously to do with like what's happening at your foot. So my feet are terrible in terms of like I wear orthotics to run because I need support. But so what happens with my feet is they rotate in. And so that impacts in terms of what's happening with my knee. So if I didn't have support there, then that would affect also as I'm coming through what happens with my leg there. But the other thing with that is if you've not got good core and you've not got good glutes, then as you're coming through, you often see a lot of runners come like this. So they come in with tight ITBs, they come in with problems with their kneecaps, patella here, and it's often linked to the fact that their glutes aren't controlling and their core is not controlling what's happening through at the knee.
So even if a runner was coming to see you for Pilates, would you still look at their footwear and if they wear orthotics?
So what I would say in terms of like a Pilates session, like if I want to look fully at sort of like an assessment in terms of footwear and lots of other stuff, ideally I would want to have a physio assessment where I can look at somebody with their feet, their running or functional movements, and then I can incorporate sort of the whole of that. Whereas if someone's booking in just for a physio for a Pilates session, that's going to be about, right, we'll look at what your control, your movement is like within that Pilates. So I think there's sort of 2 different things in terms of what we can fulfill within that time.
Of course. So you might just refer someone to come if you notice an issue in an exercise they're performing, or you ask a question, you might refer them to come see you for physio versus Pilates, and you would kind of cross-refer to yourself that way, depending on the person's needs.
Yeah, and I think particularly if somebody's not got, so if you've not got an injury and you want to mainly improve like your core, then that's probably just a Pilates session. If there's ongoing issues and you really want more of a sort of athlete functional testing and delving into things a lot more, that's a different assessment that we need to do.
Perfect. That really helps to differentiate between both of your roles. Now, we have a really neat question about the Pilates breathing and incorporating that to your running. So would you encourage people to use that Pilates breath that you're talking about in your running, or is that not something that you would encourage for athletes when they run?
Yeah, so Pilates, when we're doing the breathing techniques, I don't use them as much as maybe some people, in terms of, because I found once you get into the more complex exercises, if you're focusing loads on your breathing, everyone forgets what they're doing with their core. So in terms of what we want to get out of it. So when you're translating your Pilates actually into your running should be, your breathing should be your normal running. Your breathing should be your normal pattern of breathing for your running. And what you're wanting to achieve with your Pilates when you're running is that your exercises have provided you a good strength base that then that overlaps into your running techniques.
Okay, so you would use the different breath cues for Pilates and then separate just a regular cadence for breathing while you run.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully that answers your question, Marlene. That was a great question. I think that we've answered a lot of great questions tonight, and I think we've got a really great teaser on what you can offer us, Ali. And I think for most people, maybe they've never tried Pilates before, so this gave them an opportunity to try, or maybe they're sort of a seasoned veteran and they just really wanted to get moving again tonight. But what we love about Pilates is it definitely focuses on our core. We look at flexibility, we look at stability, and we look at balance. So it's not just one element. And it's a great way to develop functional strength. Like even when you were activating our glutes, I always forget about those when I'm running, but there's so many things going into running. The body's moving in an interconnected way, and Pilates exercises really help that body interconnection and then moving with efficiency. And I think we see a lot of runners with stiff arms or maybe signs of running inefficiently, and Pilates can really influence that. I wanted to say a big thank you to you tonight, Ali, for sharing your information. For those of you on the call, we are going to be doing a draw for a free Pilates session with Ali. Ali practices in our Aurora clinic on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. She offers 30-minute and 60-minute Pilates sessions in person, but also virtually. So if getting to Aurora is a little bit difficult for you, we can do that virtually as well. So we will be doing that draw first thing tomorrow morning and sending that information out to the lucky winner, but also with Ali's contact information, because I know a lot of you may want to get in touch with Ali, discuss some things privately, specifically about your past health history or some of your goals in running and things like that. So we'll be sure to share Ali's contact information that way, as well as how to book an appointment with her. We also offer Pilates with Nick Ashman, who's also STOT trained. He works out of our Markham clinic and our Stouffville clinic. So we do offer Pilates in all three of our locations currently. But we just wanted to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Just so you guys know, there may be some golfers on the call tonight. Ali also focuses on other areas of sport, not just for runners. So we will be hosting a Pilates for golfers on June the 2nd at 7 p.m. So we'll be sure to share that with everybody as well. But just because you may be a runner, it doesn't mean you can't use Pilates for other things as well. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the group before we sign off for tonight, Ali?
Yeah, I'd say just go away, try a few of those exercises yourself. If the easy ones, if you find the easy ones were hard, then work on those and then progress to some of those more advanced levels and just incorporate it and try it.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate your time, Ali, and your expertise. And we appreciate everybody's time on the call. We wish you a great evening and always stay moving. Pilates is one of those things that can really take your training to the next level. Thanks so much, everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.